Hi, this is Dorothy Guining with Scrapbooking Quebec, a YouTube channel that makes scrap lifting easy. I give step-by-step instructions with measurements, so you're not left wondering, what the heck did she just do? In this video, I'll show you my approach to creating layered embellishment clusters. I'll be using products from the Hello collection from My Mind's Eye, as well as some stuff I pull from my stash. And I'll list all products used in the information box below this video. You can use the products of your choice. Make sure you have a multicolored printed paper as well as a tone-on-tone. You'll need some cardstock, and one of them should be a pale neutral. You'll also need some embellishments, something to create a title, and 2 vertical 4x6 photos. This is what I'll be using, and in addition to the paper, I have some thickers, ephemera, some enamel dots. I also went into my tools and found some dies as well as a punch that coordinate with my theme. I suggest you have a peek at your tools too, because you might find something there as well. The first step is to trim a 2-inch paper from the multicolored paper and adhere it to the left-hand side of your page. That creates a border. Now you're going to mat your 2 photos. I matted mine in white in advance, that's optional, and now I'm matting it in black, and that black is found in the border, the multicolored border. So look at your multicolored border, pick a color, and mat your photos. Adhere them to the foundation page as shown on the screen, and don't put too much adhesive on your photos because you will be adding some embellishment clusters in and around these photos. The next step is going to be to take that tone-on-tone paper and cut yourself 3 shapes. I cut 3 hearts with my Big Shot in 3 different sizes, and I put the approximate sizes on the screen. Now you can cut hearts. If you don't have a die cutting machine, you can cut them by hand. And if you don't like hearts, you can use circles. But what's important here is that you cut out 3 identical shapes in 3 different sizes and adhere them to your page as shown. The largest one should be at the bottom, the smallest at the top, and the middle one is tucked in between the 2 photos. And once that's done, it's time to establish a spot for your journaling and your title. So I'm going to do my journaling on the left-hand side of the left photo. I put a little journaling box there, and the title is on the top left-hand corner. And once that title is down, it will be time to start building the embellishment clusters. Now I'm going to build 3 around my page to create a visual triangle, and I'm going to start with the bottom right-hand corner. Now when I make embellishment clusters, I always start with a large foundation piece, and in this case it's the heart. Then I start adding elements to the cluster, and I always start with the bigger pieces and finish with the small pieces. What you see me doing here is reinforcing this piece of ephemera, this bird, with some cardstock, because this kit of ephemera is paperweight and I want to add some foam adhesive behind this bird. So I wanted to add a little bit more body to this piece of ephemera. So that's another thing I do when I create embellishment clusters. I like to add some dimension to the clusters by adding foam adhesive to some of the pieces, which is what I'm doing with this bird here. I'm also going to add a speech bubble from the Thickers kit, and this is forming the basis of my embellishment clusters. This is going to be the biggest one, and the other 2 are just going to be supporting embellishment clusters. But what I'm going to start doing when I build the other ones is I'm going to draw from the first one. I'm going to start repeating elements. So they're not going to be identical, but they're is going to be a certain amount of repetition. Now this second cluster I'm building, which will be smaller, starts with a heart foundation as well, the heart at the base of the cluster. I added a flower. There's flowers in the first one as well, even though they're different. And now what I'm doing is I'm adding a little hummingbird. I made that with the punch that I showed you at the beginning. It's the punch that I found in my tool stash. It happens to be perfect for this page because I'm in a tropical hummingbird garden. Even though those two clusters aren't finished yet, I'm still going to move on to cluster number 3. What I do at the beginning is I basically establish these 3 clusters, and then I'll go back in a minute, you'll see. This third cluster really doesn't have a foundation piece yet, so I'm adding a tag as a foundation piece, and I'm putting it behind the journaling box. I added a little pink reinforcer. It's in the same paper as those hearts because I wanted a repeat of that pink in this cluster. And now I added some flowers, and I'm also going to add one of those black hummingbirds on some foam adhesive as well. So my clusters aren't finished, but I have a good start to them. So all I'm going to do now is step back, have a look at all 3 clusters, and ask myself, how can I unify these 3 embellishment clusters? So what I'm doing here, what I did in advance, is I cut some leaves out with my Big Shot with some dies that I found in my stash. They're called Botanical Builder dies. And I cut leaves out in that mint green, and that mint green is also found in the border on the left. So I cut a bunch of these leaves out, and I'm going to tuck them in and around all 3 clusters. So it really does reinforce my visual triangle here. Now, if it were winter, maybe I would put snowflakes, or if I didn't want an organic shape, I could put circles or swirls or rings. But think of something that you can add to all 3 clusters that can unify them. And once this is done, I also have another look and think, what am I missing here? And I'm noticing I have that yellow tag on the left, even though it's mostly covered up. And there's a yellow flower in the bottom right, but there's no yellow in the top cluster. So that's when I get out my enamel dots. I find enamel dots are small, and it's a great way just to add a hint of color, just to balance things out. What am I missing? That's what I'm asking myself here, and I'm adding a few of these enamel dots. You could also add paint splatters, ink, I don't know, but something small. It only takes something small, and it will help balance it out. What you see me doing now is I decide to add a border to my border. Really, I'm cutting a thin strip of black cardstock. Doesn't have to be black, of course, but in my case it is. And I'm also using a thin strip of that pink pinstripe paper that's found in my hearts, and I'm adding both of those to the left hand side of my border. What I'm really doing here is basically solidifying my border. I felt like there was no beginning to my page. So by putting this on the edge of my border, I feel like I'm establishing the beginning of my page. It's like the page starts here. So I'm going to glue this down, and then after I get that down, I'm going to have another look at my page, and you're going to see me, I add a few more enamel dots and I fuss around a bit. So while I'm doing this, I'm going to take a moment just to review my approach to making layered embellishment clusters. Basically, the first thing I do is I start with a foundation piece, and in my case, they are those 2 pink hearts as well as the tag behind the journaling box. Something big. That's where I'm going to create my cluster. After that, I start adding pieces to my cluster, and I always start with the largest piece and finish with the smallest piece. Also, when I make more than one embellishment cluster, one is always a main cluster, and the other 1 or 2 are supporting smaller embellishment clusters. And finally, when I'm finishing the page, I have a look at the page and I ask myself, how can I unify these 3 clusters? Already, I've put stuff in there that are similar, that have repeats, but I really want to solidify the embellishment clusters, solidify the visual triangle, and I did this by adding the leaves and those yellow enamel dots. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please let me know. Give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to Scrapbooking Quebec. It really does motivate me to make more videos. Thank you and have a great day.